Hey everybody, welcome back. And today's the first Tuesday drawing video. Yeah, number one. Since you guys want to just listen to me yap and yammer on Fridays, I'm going to go ahead, like I said the last time, we're going to be doing all my drawings and all that stuff here. This will not be scripted. I am going to sound like an absolute feral goblin sometimes. Other times I might actually make a point, but what's important is you guys get to follow through the process and actually get to watch something get drawn. I will do my best to explain what I'm doing, but I am going to warn you, I'm going to cut here and then I'm going to draw. And most likely it's going to be a drawing and a voiceover. I don't really like seeing a talking head when I'm drawing, like when I'm watching drawing videos, so I'm not going to subject you guys to it. If you think you'd rather see that, cool, let me know. I'll put that stuff in the next video. But anyways, here we go. You guys, y'all had the poll. I put up a poll, and y'all had the choice between an artillery witch from Trench Crusade, a Sister of Battle from Warhammer 40,000, and number 3 was the Valkyrie from Norse mythology. And it was a tight race, but you guys chose Valkyrie. Y'all threw me for a loop. But that's fine. I love loops. It gives me a chance to kind of stretch out and figure out what the hell I'm going to do. Anyways, here comes the drawing video. I hope you guys like it. And I'll see y'all on Friday, and hopefully I'll see you Tuesday. So I went ahead and got everything sketched up in Procreate. I did about 6 of them, found number 6 that I liked the best. So that's what we went with. I'm giving myself kind of a rough idea of what I want things to look like. And transition. Now we're going into doing all the pencil work. With the pencil work, I'm using a red lead. I think it's June Gold or one of those cheap Amazon brands. And I think my pencils are crap. I've had them so long they've worn off what they are. But I think they were a brand I bought at I think Michael's or just a hobby store. It's just a standard 2mm lead holder. Um, I don't really like drawing with a golf pencil, and wooden pencils over time they tend to wear down to the point where I'm just working with a nub. And excuse me, as hard as I grip on pencils, I can't use those extenders, or else I end up screaming and yelling and being incredibly angry about things. And we don't like that, or at least I don't. Um, but anyways, everything here is just kind of getting it all roughed in, so I know where all my markers are. And by markers, I mean the markers, the beats of the artwork. I'm not doing anything real fancy at this moment. I'm just constructing the baseline of the figure. Now we get into kind of starting to detail out that figure, get past the base. And what we're doing here, I'm using the old trusty kneaded eraser. Anyone will work, but I use Faber-Castell. I don't know why. It seems to be the stickiest. I can get some of that stuff off of there a little bit easier. And then we just go in. I think the lead I got was I think it's just a number 2 lead that I found at like Daiso. Again, back with the lead holders. Um, I don't really think gear is as important. Um, I've talked about this in the past. Gear just gets the job done. If you want certain gear, if you have a preference, by all means use it. I'll pick up anything that'll make a mark and put it on anything that'll make a surface. Um, I've seen people online catch all kinds of hell over over the gear they use. And I think that's dumb, guys. That creates this weird barrier for entry for a lot of artists. And I don't like gatekeeping. If the only materials you have are, a number two lead that your kid got from school, use it. If all you've got is blue line loose leaf notebook paper, and by God, you have to make a piece of artwork, if it has to get out, let it out. The gear is irrelevant. Um, I think a lot of artists on social media that get really into gear, it's trying to sell you something, or they're trying to homogenize art, and especially on the online kind of places, art shouldn't be homogenized. Every artist should be unique. Every artist has their own voice, and while yes, that voice is a blend of all the voices that they've heard, it's still their voice. Your personal voice is a blend of everybody you've ever hung out with, talked with, every TV show you've ever watched. So why shouldn't your art be? Anyways, back to back to it. I'm actually at this point right now, we're just kind of getting the face in the best we can. I don't know if you can tell, but that face isn't it's kind of tied in there. And generally, if you go small, and this is something I've learned in the tattoo world, it rings pretty true in the publication world, that sort of thing. The smaller it is, the less detailed you can have it. Um, I haven't checked any proportions. I haven't. I mean, I've eyeballed, but I'm more or less kind of playing. Like even right now, looking back at this, man, I made that head awful domey. Thank God that's a helmet and not her actual head. um, but we're at this point just again still kind of loosely roughing things in, but I have more of a plan at this point. You saw the drawing at the beginning. That's still kind of my loose plan. Um, I had my reference set up on a desktop that sits at the top of my desk. Desktop, go figure, right? So I had that up so I could continue looking at it. Um, I don't know where this weird illusion or myth or whatever, and I've talked about it before, where reference isn't necessary to create art. I will still, to this day, all day, every day, soundly call bullshit on that. You need reference if you're an artist. I don't care who you are. Even if you're looking at other artists as reference, it's still reference. The reference I'm going from, honestly, it's that quick drawing that I put up front, just so I can kind of get an idea of where everything's supposed to go. But what I'm doing now is just a quick compositional kind of a half-ass background element, so she's just not sitting there randomly on paper. And ooh, look at that transition. I did it again, right? Yay, Matt figured out transitions. Anyways, back to the old kneaded eraser to start getting into inks. Now, my inking process is really kind of slapdash. I'm at the moment I'm using a zero point 0.2 and a zero point 0.8 with a couple of brush pens. Um, the zero point 0.2, the zero point 0.8, and one of the brush pens are Ohuhu brand, and I really like them. They're nice. You got to really watch it, especially being a left-handed person like I am, because their their ink is liquid. It comes out kind of liquidy, so you have a really quick chance of or a good chance of smudging things. So you got to be real careful about that. And there are other fine liner brands out there, and I can't, I'm not going to endorse any one. I've used a bunch of them. Outside of the Ohuhus, I do like the Molotov brand. Great company out of Germany. They do their ink is amazing. That's what I usually throw at people when they say they don't like fine liners. And a lot of times they'll change their mind afterwards. Um, I like fine liners because, well, it's a fine liner. I can be a little bit more precise. Now, that being said, I love going just absolutely hog wild with brush pens too. Um, I really like the Tombow brush pens. Um, and every once in a blue moon, I really like pulling out a nib and nib holders and you know torturing myself with those. um, it's all masochism. Art is masochism. um, but if you noticed, I'm going through with my fine liner with my two, and I'm just getting everything in. We're not really trying to do anything exceptional at this point. I'm not trying to play with line weights. I'm not trying to play with anything. Um, with fine liners, you can play with line weights, despite what some people will tell you, and it's all about how much pressure you put on the page. So you'll see every once in a while, I'll kind of flick my wrist at the end of a line. That'll kind of take some of that and give me a little bit of a line weight difference. And obviously the figure is without clothes. I know on YouTube that kind of gets a little dicey, so we did the ribbon around her. But also I like the ribbon. It gives it a little bit of flow. She herself was pretty static, so that ribbon actually helped her move. As I'm looking at the proportions, again, hindsight being 2020, watching the video replay, I'm noticing she's a little long. She looks a little too thin for what I'd imagine a Valkyrie to look like. I always picture Valkyries to be pretty stout looking, but you know, it's getting it done. You know, I came in saying I wanted to do something for you guys. I wanted to throw some sort of a poll, and I wanted you guys' opinion on things. You guys, God, where did that come from? I'm supposed to say y'all, right? But yeah, we're coming in, like I said, we're just getting all the fine lining knocked in. This is where I'm going to tackle the details in her face. You're not going to see much more of the detail in her face. Like I said, with anytime you're going big, you really, or anytime you want detail, it needs to be larger. Um, and to be honest, oh, hey, that's whenever I talk about embracing the suck, you just saw what happened there. I was having a hard time. I was a dumbass and didn't pull a ruler. So we're going through and doing everything without the ruler. And that line wasn't quite as straight or as perfect as I would like it to be. So we gave her a little bit of a wrap on the spear. Also kind of gave it a little bit of a flow element, which is kind of cool. And now we're throwing in those little cloudy background elements. And now we're coming in, I think at this point, I think I'm still on the zero point 0.2, but we're about to switch over to the 08. well, okay, a little bit more O2, but now we're into the O8. And what that does, obviously, sorry, I just burped. Is it gives us a heavier line. That heavier line's going to pull her out of the background a little bit. And you're going to see I'm going to use that on certain elements throughout the whole thing just to kind of pull things away from other things. Um, Heavy lines will draw your eye. Heavy use of black will also draw your eye. You want to keep those heavier spots to try to pull your eye. Um, Especially in a light background like this. Now, on a dark background where you're working in reverse, all of your heavy whites are going to pull your eye a lot more than your heavy blacks. But, again, that comes down to kind of taking a look at your composition, figuring out what you're going to do, and making it happen from there. Um, a lot of it is experimenting, a lot of it is honestly kind of flailing around until you get things figured out. Um, Embracing the suck, as I constantly say, is a big thing about it. Learning how to suck, learning how to get things out of the way early. And if you ask me, I'm not 100% happy with this piece of art. I'm not particularly upset with it, but I'm not. This isn't the best work I've ever done. I'll be the first to tell you that. But what it is getting it done. And let's be honest, sometimes getting it done is more important than getting it done perfectly, especially when you're learning. And yeah, I can point out anatomical flaws, I can point out perspective or proportion issues that I just don't like about it. But at the same time, it looking back at it shows me where I need to correct things. And if I don't want to correct them, if I want something, if I like the way something looks, it gives me the opportunity to go, hey, what am I going to lean into this time or the next time? You know, um, I I'm trying to remember some artist I'd heard talked a lot about being finished, not being perfect, and I agree with that. Get it done. It doesn't have to be always. You don't have to be 100% on top of everything all the time. In fact, sometimes it's better if you're not. I know that sounds weird, right? But being finished, not being perfect, is always going to be a good mark on you. Um, but as you can tell, I'm just kind of outlining everything right now. Like I said, we're wanting to pull her off the background. Do you like that segue? God, that was a horrible segue. You don't have to tell me you liked it. It's okay, boys and girls. Um, so now I've pulled out oh crap, what is this guy? I want to say it's a Pentel, but it's one of those um bigger brush pens. That's all I can say about it. It's a big old brush pen. Um and that's what we're going to do a lot of our spot blacks in, at least at this stage. There will be a point where I pull out an actual brush and some ink just to kind of get some coverage. But this is again just getting all of our silhouettes and our heavy blacks in. And again, use what you got to use. If you are more comfortable using a round brush, use a round brush. it's getting it done. If you're not comfortable with any of it and you want to do everything in graphite, do it in graphite. I will say, as an artist, though, sometimes you have to break out of your comfort zones. Um, I wanted to do this on a larger surface, just so you guys can see it, just so I could open up a little bit more, and just so I could, well, challenge myself. I'm used to drawing on smaller surfaces. To be honest, I've gotten so used to my iPad that breaking out and doing traditional mediums sometimes is daunting. And I will sit in my comfort zone for weeks. My comfort zone being an iPad and Procreate. So when I decided to do this channel, a lot of it was I was going to make myself do more traditional artwork, working with more traditional mediums, that sort of thing. Because I'd found myself leaning on my digital so much more. And yeah, that was kind of getting to me. But yeah, so we decided to go ahead and oh, I'm sorry, I got all tongue tied again. It's early, guys. I filmed this last night and decided to voice over in the morning, and well, morning versus night kind of screwed with me, I guess. But I was trying to draw bigger, and usually I like working as on traditional mediums at about 8.5 by 11, 9 by 14, somewhere in there. Um, and I ended up having almost a panic attack because I got so caught up in, oh my God, this page is so big. And I had to I had to take a break. I had to hold off. I had to draw the next day. So while I was doing that, a good friend of mine got to talking and he's like, why not just lean into it? You know, lean into it. Show people that you have issues with it. And he was right. So I leaned into it. I went ahead and got a big old sheet of paper, and that way I didn't feel constrained by the surface. And that way I could just draw. And we managed to fill up a good chunk of that page. But it was a matter of making sure that, you know, yes, I'm having issues, but instead of trying to avoid them, I wanted to lean into them. I wanted to go, okay, if I'm going to screw up, I'm going to screw up regally and I'm going to screw up in front of you guys. Hopefully, I don't think I screwed it up all too bad. I think it turned out nice. There, again, are flaws, but what art isn't flawed completely? Or flawless, completely flawless. God, one of these days I'll actually learn how to talk. But again, that's embracing the suck, right? I'm on YouTube. I'm still my first couple of months into YouTube. I'm still trying to keep my ADHD in check enough where I can stay on some sort of a point. And, you know, it's a challenge sometimes. That's why you hear the weird pauses. That's why you get a lot of the ums and the ahs and that kind of stuff. I'm still trying to figure this stuff out, guys. Hopefully, and I think you guys have said a couple of times that you like what I'm doing, so I appreciate that. Um, so whenever I said I was going to break out a brush, this is where I started breaking out a brush. I had an old vial of rapidograph ink from probably the oh crap, probably the early 2000s, somewhere in there. Um, It's the Kohinoor Ultra Draw. I'll see if I can find some links to anything I'm using, and I'll post those in the description below. But all of this stuff, I've either had for a million years, or I think the most expensive thing in this was buying very, very, very large paper. And I think for the pad, I spent about $30. What I'm trying to get at is none of this stuff is completely inaccessible. I don't believe in doing anything too inaccessible, and I've heard people complain about watercolor paper, whatever. This is Canson. This is mixed media paper. I'm not paying attention to the archival quality of it. I don't. If this lasts 10 years, it lasts 10 years. If it lasts 5, it lasts 5. For me, it's about making the art. It's about getting something done. If I want to use fancier paper, I will. But when we're learning, use the cheap shit, guys. You don't have to have any kind of gateway into entry. I'm not gatekeeping art. That is stupid. Make the art you want to make. Make the bad art. I say it all the time. Make the bad art. Embrace the suck. Buy the cheap shit. It still works. It still lets you do what you want to do. I've been rambling about cheap shit all day. I think I heard somebody complaining about it online. Sorry guys, y'all had to hear all of that. I guess. Well, no, I'm not sorry. You guys do need to hear that. Don't let someone ridicule you for your materials. Your hand creates the art. The material is just the vessel of that art. But yeah, like I said, I pulled out a brush just because, you know, sometimes it helps. Oh, that was loud. But yeah, get all that art where, oy, I got tongue tied again. Get what you need to do done. Make what you need to make. And like I said, here's that old ass bottle of pen white that I've had forever. I think I used it in my last drawing video. I could have erased, but sometimes that screws up. Sometimes it's easier to just get the white in there. Anyways, this is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like, drop a comment, ring the bell, and get out there and make that bad art, guys. I'll see y'all next week. Enjoy.